Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This cabinet may look familiar to some of you because a couple of videos back I did a video on just the technique of how to create a raised stencil on the front. This video is going to show you the start to finish transformation because loads of you asked for it and I was always going to do one anyway, let's be honest. You may be surprised how this piece started out. The story behind it is my mum actually bought me this from a charity shop, and when she first gave it to me I thought, what am I supposed to do with that? It had a factory finish on it. It has a plastic panel on the front, and that's not even glass. I'll be honest, it's probably not something I would have even looked twice at in a charity shop. However, the creative juices got flowing and I felt like I could do something a little bit cool and boho with it. So hopefully this video goes to show you that you can make something completely unique and a little bit quirky out of something that isn't even solid wood. It's got a factory finish on it. Just goes to show that you can paint anything and the possibilities are endless. And I do realise by saying I'm trying to make something cool in my intro makes me very uncool, but I tried to edit it out and I couldn't make it work, so it's had to stay in. But what I mean is you can make something out of nothing. I wouldn't have looked twice at this in a charity shop, but it actually turned out really nice and I think I might even keep it for myself. So obviously we had to clean it. It's been in a charity shop, it's second hand, we don't know what's on it. You can get builds up of things like polishes which have silicons in, which can be kind of rubbed into the finish and create problems with adhesion. So I always start with cleaning. Then there was a couple of knocks to that factory finish. As you can see there is some kind of wood underneath it. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. You don't always need to know what a piece is made out of to be able to paint it. But I am going to sand those pieces smooth, because if you can run your finger over something like a scratch or a dent or a chip and you can physically feel that with your finger, it means you're going to be able to see it through your paintwork. If it's a very superficial scratch mark and you can't feel it when you rub your finger over it, you can usually get away with it. It means it's only a surface scratch and paint will cover it absolutely fine. So the magic ingredient in this piece is going to be Bond Emboss. This product replaces a product that Dixie Belle had called Slick Stick. That was a primer. This is also a primer. It's a problem solving primer. You do not need to use it on every project. The purpose for Bond Emboss is twofold. So this blocks stains. If you need something that blocks stains, this is it. If you also want something to paint a tricky surface to create adhesion, this is also it. So Bond Emboss now does the job of Boss and Slick Stick together. So as I mentioned in the intro, I actually did a separate video on how to create a 3D raised stencil on the front of this panel. So I'm not going to go over it in too much detail again. I'll link that video top right now and I'll just go over kind of basics of what I did. So I'm using the Morocco stencil from Dixie Belle Paint. I'm also using a product called Dixie Mud, which is like a paste, and I'm just applying that with a spatula over the top of the Dixie Mud. I've taped the door off so that that pattern is contained within the door frame. The last thing I did before the Dixie Mud had a chance to dry is just wet a paintbrush that's really soft paintbrush and then lightly drag that over the surface, and that helps you get a nice smooth finish. And then again, before the Dixie Mud has dried, I removed the stencil, and that gives you that 3D pattern. Once it is completely dried, you can sand any texture smooth if you wanted to, and then the last thing I did is just coated over the top with satin clear coat. So the colour scheme that I'm going to do on this is actually inspired by a past piece, which I'll show you now. It's a bench that I did a few years ago and I have no real video content to it. And when I shared it recently on social media, I got a load of questions asking me how I did it, created that kind of soft tonal layered look. So I'm going to recreate it as best I can, because obviously, you know, when you do kind of pieces that are layered and colour mixing and all the rest of it, you can never get it exactly the same, but I'm going to get it as similar as I can. So the base layer, which is the colour that is going on now, is actually a mixture of two colours. There's a mixture of Peacock and Vintage Duck Egg. They're both colours from Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint range. So it had 2 coats of that colour mix applied as a solid base colour, and then I'm going to start adding dimension with a few other colours. So the next colour is Yankee Blue, and I'm going to use it as a colour wash, and all that means is I'm going to water down the paint. Now you can water down the paint however you like. This is roughly 50-50 ratio. There's no right or wrong. The less water you put in, the stronger the colour is going to be. So you want to work in small areas with this because you don't want your paint wash to dry before you've had a chance to manipulate it. So I'm just working on the front panel to begin with, and you can see the coverage of this is really good. Even though I've watered down the paint quite a lot, the coverage is still absolutely amazing, and that's testament to how good Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint is. It's absolutely phenomenal coverage wise. So I'm going to, like I say, work in small areas, and then with a shop cloth, I use these quite a lot because they're disposable. They're like a kitchen roll, but they don't shed on your furniture. They're quite robust, so I use these a lot. I get mine from Amazon. I'll link them in the description if you want to know where you get them from, because I do get asked quite a lot of times where I get them from. And then you're just going to want to wipe the excess colour wash away. Again, it's up to you how much you wipe off. If you want it more dramatic, leave it on in areas, or if you wanted to just have a real subtle kind of colour wash, then you can wipe it back a little bit more. You can also use a spritz of water to remove the paint if you wanted to take it back a little bit more. As you can see from the front panel, which I've already done, the darker paint, which is the colour wash that I've just put on, is sitting in all the kind of recessed areas and creating shadow and shade. The next thing I'm going to do is highlight the high areas. So the colour wash is going to create shadow and depth, and this technique is going to highlight the higher areas to create a 3D effect. And this colour is Vintage Duck Egg, which is one of the original colours that I mixed in the first place with Peacock to create the base colour. So this is a dry brushing technique, and what you need to do is apply a little amount onto a brush and then remove as much paint as physically possible onto a rag so that you have hardly any paint on your brush at all. The idea is you should be able to wipe your paintbrush on your hand and hardly any paint, if any, should come off. So you just want the smallest amount of pigment on your paintbrush. I'm using a synthetic brush, but you can do this with a natural bristle brush as well. The reason I'm using synthetic is because I wanted a round or an oval shaped brush, because that's not going to give me kind of any brush marks or strokes in one direction. And as you can see, I'm holding my paintbrush really loosely towards the end of the handle, which is going to give me that kind of loose finish. I don't want any precision with this, and I'm also altering the way in which my brush is applied onto the surface, and this way it's just going to really slowly build up that kind of highlight, and you can see it really subtly in the close-ups that I'll share towards the end. The last thing I did on my bench is to seal it. Now I'm going to miss that step out because this is just a little wall shelf. So I sealed the bench with satin clear coat, if memory serves me correctly, and then after that I went in with some Best Dang wax in white to again just lighten the whole thing. And you know that I'm a massive fan of black wax and brown wax, but white wax can add a real kind of boho-y, faded, beachy kind of look, depending on the style of furniture that you use it on. That can also add some really interesting kind of tonal variations as well as the brown wax and the black wax. I love it over the top of these blues. It looks super pretty, and again it just kind of highlights any areas of detail that you might have and create a little bit more dimension on your piece. As I mentioned, if you've got a piece that you're using this technique on that is going to be subject to higher traffic than this, I would recommend sealing this with one of Dixie Belle's clear coats first and then applying your wax after, or you can apply your wax first and then seal it after, because Best Dang wax is water based, so that won't cause an issue at all. Once the wax had been on for about 20 minutes, I buffed the excess off, and here's a couple of close-ups. I tried to get a zoomed in kind of close-up of the 3D pattern on the front there, and as you can see, it kind of looks like it's always been there. It's meant to be on that front panel. And here is the final shot of the finished piece. thank you for watching the video. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. If you don't already, I'd love it if you could hit the subscribe button, and I will catch you next time. Bye!